Alright everyone, as last week we talked about fermented foods and their health benefits, this week we are actually fermenting some pickles. Especially after learning about vinegar pickles not really having that same pizzazz, I wanted to show you guys the actual old school fermentation methods. And so I've got mostly store-bought cucumbers with that one big homegrown one, a Fido jar that is like airtight when you clasp it shut like this. And of course, the beginnings of a brine, in which we're going to use some kosher salt that does not have iodine in it. I guess iodine can make them taste pretty weird as they pickle. But to make a brine that is salty enough to be safe and yet not too salty, you want to do about 7 grams of salt to 1 cup of water. So I have 4 cups of water here, and so I'm using about 28 grams of salt. And I also see a lot of people say that the salt is quite overbearing and that sugar helps cut some of that. So I'm going to also do an equal amount of sugar into the brine. And so as you see, I've got that water boiling here so I can very easily, dissolve all of that because you don't want to miss any salt. You don't want any of it on the bottom. After that, it's a matter of picking my spices. And here I have dill, fennel seeds, garlic, 1 chili pepper from the garden, peppercorns, bay leaves, and also this really nice French mustard. As for measurements, oh man, you know me. I don't really measure stuff, so just kind of go with your heart's feeling there. If a jar is as big as this Fido jar is, you're going to want to put a decent amount of stuff so that like the bottom is pretty well coated. And we also need 1,000,002 cloves of garlic. Trust me, it's not going to be hyper garlicky. It's just that you need a lot if you want that brine to really leach that flavor out. So once we have all of that done, we can finally move on to the next part. One thing I did forget to mention is an onion. So in a jar this big, I'm putting about half of a chopped up onion in there. That's also going to add a lot of flavor and do a lot of nice stuff in there too. But then you want to prepare your cucumbers. And so most of these are just normal store-bought ones, but you want to cut the edges off and get them into a nice snack size shape. I also rinse them beforehand just to get any like lasting, pesticides or anything off. But then you're going to go ahead and fill that jar with all those pickles. Now, of course, I gotta cut up Big Bubba here, and the reason this one is yellow is because it was hiding on me. It was hiding in the tall grass, and so I missed it. And as you can see, she's a little mature. She's got some seeds in her, and then by this point, she's going to be too bitter to eat plain. So we really got no choice but to pickle her. And do not be like me and be too impatient and excited to cool down your brine. I realized directly after pouring this that, oh no, if the brine is still too hot, it may kill all of the stuff in the jar that you need to actually ferment in the first place. So that was no fun, but after realizing that, I kind of panic made another batch of brine and set up another 2 jars of pickles just as like a side-by-side to see what would happen to test it. And as you can see, this brine is much cooler because I actually let it come to room temperature first before I poured it. This is generally what you're supposed to do. But also, once we're done here, you don't want to fully like hyper seal your pickles. Like you don't want to put a lid on all the way tight, and that's because as they ferment, they're going to create carbon dioxide. And if too much of that builds up, you're going to explode something because the gas will have nowhere to go. You also risk overflow just in general because of how, volume displacement works. All that gas building up means it might push some of the liquid out. So to prevent that, you just want to take a little baking dish or something, set it aside so you don't get brine all over your counter in the event that something like that happens. But now we wait about 3 to 5 days to see how everything is progressing. And if you have leftover brine, you can also just stick that in the fridge and save it for another batch. And okay, this is day 2, and the batch I thought was lost and messed up because of that hot brine, no, you can see it's a little cloudy in there, and that's good. You want that. That means that there is fermentation. You can even start to see the tiniest bit of bubbles forming. That slightly cloudy brine means that the good bacteria that you need for fermentation is actually doing its job and eating everything up. So yay, hooray for us. And then by day 3, you can actually see the sediment in there. Again, that's not bad. That's not like mold or anything. That's just what happens when the bacteria eats up all the sugars in here and spits out that natural byproduct. There's also going to be, again, those fizzy bubbles because it's starting to make gas from all of that eating up it's doing. Top also looks good. No problems there. No film or weird stuff building up. So, yeah, it looks like we actually have some batches of pickles that are properly pickling on the counter, the way that people have pickled for thousands and thousands of years. Alright, forgive my Saturday appearance, but it has been 5 days since these have been sitting, and I want to know what they taste like. So we're going to try them, and we're gonna hope that they are good. I think they're good, but we'll find out. So I have bowl, clean fork, and we're going to pop this open. And there's no grossness on the top, so that is a good sign. Let me show you. After 5 days of sitting on the counter at room temperature, this is what it looks like. You can see some bubbles, which is really good. That means there is fermentation. And there's no film of like calm yeast on the top. I looked up a little bit about what that would look like. It would look something like this if there were a problem, but for the most part, nope. It seems we got fuzzy pickles, like the fizzy ones with the bubbles. The brine itself got a little cloudy, so that's really good. As far as the smell, it smells fine. It doesn't, like, there's nothing that smells gross or weird about it, so. If they need more fermenting, I guess I'm just gonna kind of let it sit, which I don't really want to do. So these are the ones that I poured hot brine on, and since it was like still hot, these might be soft as a result, but the colder brine, I think, will make it a little bit more crunchy. And so I actually made a new jar of pickles with cold brine that I had left over, so we'll see about that. But they smell sweet, they smell dilly. Salty. Not quite like a vinegar pickle, but it's pickled. No, that actually kind of tastes like a kosher dill pickle, which is kind of surprising. These are pretty good. There's like the lightest sour flavor. But that's good, and that's exciting. Let me see what my boyfriend thinks. Well, I think I'm gonna ferment them a little longer, but what do you think about the flavor?
Flavor's good. Tastes a bit oily.
Oily? There's no oil in it.
Oh, I don't mean that I think there's oil. I just, something about its texture feels oily.
It's probably just because they're soft. These were hot when I poured the brine, so I might have made them like soft like that. You think they need longer? I gotta get more sour?
Yeah, I don't think it's very sour, but I don't think that's necessarily bad.
So yeah, I think I'm gonna let those sit just for like a couple more days until they get like more directly sour. And then once you are done with this, like once they are just about sour enough, not all the way sour, but just about sour enough for you, that's when you move it to the fridge, because the fridge will slow down the bacteria that make it ferment. And so it'll continue fermenting in the fridge, it'll continue getting more sour and stuff, but it won't go so fast, and it won't just totally hyperspeed your pickles, you know, so you can keep them for a while. And they'll just be like a nice, very slow, gradual ferment instead of like super fast. I also made a new jar of them because I took 4 more pickles from the garden, 4 more cucumbers, so the more cucumbers I get, the more pickles I make. But overall, that is how you make lacto-fermented pickles. Not just vinegar ones, but legitimate, like old school, like grandma with a basement full of jars type pickles. So, let me know what you thought. Let me know if you would want to try that out. And I will see you guys next time for some more Kitchen Witch tomfoolery. See ya!